beautifully crafted Yon. It just really, really nice. Has a wonderfully classical feel. I mean, it reminds me very much, of that kind of precise searching for the 19th century style, that early 19th century style that we kind of heard in the last two also excellent entries since I've come back here to New Zealand. Yeah, there's just such beautiful polish on this, and there are a few things that will need a little bit of clarification, right? Maybe not so much in the context of the, it's funny. There's a slightly obvious and yet sort of ambiguous kind of approach, right, for some early 19th century scores. So the ambiguity is that it's interpretable in several different ways, and then the obvious thing is that there is a kind of obvious way to handle it. So the composers back then rarely clarified things with something like, say, piano subito and so on. Okay, so all the same, let us jump back to the beginning and break this down section by section, and just look at the evaluation criteria, sort of stack those up against what I'm about to talk about. In first place, I love this solo bass down here. I think that makes a beautiful combination with your horns in G. Now, were this to be scored for a modern ensemble, I might even put pianissimo in here, just to be absolutely sure, that all the players would be aware of the delicacy, right? Especially the horn players. Now, it works fine in the mock-up, but all the same, just to clarify for maybe players that don't have a lot of rehearsal time, or maybe are in a semi-pro situation, that kind of thing. Now, that's our stack along with the bassoon, right? So here you have this second bassoon player firming up the second horn right here. That's also beautifully done, right? The low horn player this low is going to need some kind of steadying to their pitch, and you've provided it there with the bassoon, so that's really great. So that just leaves this lovely little chorale, and probably in a real concert situation there would be some stretching out here of the tempo, perhaps a bit of a crescendo, at least in the first oboe part, and then just kind of a relaxing, back into the tempo and a diminuendo at the end. So yeah, I mean, if that is going to be the natural outcome, you might as well mark it, is my feeling. Da 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 da. Do you see what I mean? And Beethoven marks a fermata, so should you. All right, on all of these quarter values and on this eighth value here at the end. So, the scoring here is quite nice. I would say, if everybody's balancing to a piano, then the tenor register bassoon here is going to come off fine. It's not going to be, timbrally, the most ideal thing to do from the E would be to, perhaps have this dovetailing off to an oboe part, but then it wouldn't be so much in the period. Do you know what I mean? So that upper register of the bassoon, that tenor register, it was expected to be something that could work with upper winds on an equal footing, right? Back then, even. So that's just the fussiness in me, of thinking that there's possibly other ways that you might want to approach this. But I would say just for the period, this is all fine. All right, so does it set the mood effectively? I would say so, because it is, you didn't set your mock-ups tempo too fast, and you have just the beautiful, solemn, and yet optimistic unveiling of the mood, right? Which leads to this very precise, kind of pointy exposition here. And I think it's interesting that you are dealing with three different types of articulation here. You've got your staccatissimo, very Mozartian. And then here we've got a mezzo staccato and slurs. Now here, I think you need mezzo staccato on both voices, not just the inside voices, because it just sounds weird, if the players aren't, like one set of players is going to make the other set of players wonder why they're not doing it, right? And then it'll take more explanation, and then you'll have, pencil work and everything else, right? So I think it's better, especially in the light of these players playing against the staccatissimo with mezzo staccato in some voices, it's better that they all be mezzo staccato. All right, so does the melody start with elegance? I mean, it's elegantly simple, right? It's not necessarily elegant in like that sort of smooth, suave way, but I think it does, it does what it needs to do. I think that the bowings are nicely divided, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. Right, so it's just like perfectly, perfectly nicely divided. Right in here, I think that the way that you have worked out the accompaniment, I mean, I have in my evaluation criteria natural flow as a question, but I mean it bubbles along, right? Or it kind of bounces along rather than flowing along. But I still feel that that's valid. Okay, and I feel that this is all very nicely done here. The transition to octaves is very natural, and you actually don't expand. Like I have the question mark, expanding without clogging up. You don't really expand. I mean, you add a little bit more function to your bass part, right? But that's not really expansion. I mean, there's an expansion of the melody going upwards. But it all works very, very well and is nice and open. Your architecture is beautifully open. So it is very much more Mozartian, I would say, than it is necessarily Beethovenian. Okay? But, this works great. So, next question is, when we get to here, just a little note. This is something that I shared recently in another evaluation, and that is, if you're going to have Roman numerals on a part, then you should say, like for instance, Roman numeral 1 here. You should say oboes, Roman numeral 1, and then or the ampersand sign, right? And then 2, right? In Roman numeral 2. So when you say 2 oboes in Arabic numerals, just to be kind of painfully particular about it, you should use you should use Arabic numerals for your parts, right? So like if you're going to use a Arabic numeral here, okay? So yeah, so just you're going to say I, then have I plus I or whatever I. Okay, so getting back to this, so are you sure you don't want a ta at the end? Do you really want ta rather than ta? Because here you go ta. So if you have a ta at the end of this response to the call, right? Maybe you also need a ta here, which helps to really have it just really helps everything to line up very nicely in both lines. Right? Just like they're both going to go boom right at that, rather than this slurring into here with the ta, with a t or a tick or whatever of staccato right in here. But other than that, I mean, this all works fine. The balance is great, and you contrast with the theme because you're playing in in winds rather than strings. You contrast between your lines by changing things around quite a bit, bouncing back and forth between different parts, different wind instruments, and you decide to not go for harmonic support, and it's fine. It doesn't really need it. Okay. So the next question is emphatic color of line harmonic density setting up this next section in here. Okay, well, all right. So, I mean, emphatic color of line in the sense that you have, you know, two soloistic instruments. I mean, you've already engaged them in a soloistic part, right? So, like, you're just maintaining that level of soloistic playing. Here's the problem, though, is that you have your crescendos leading into the dynamic, right? You want some separation, right? You know, it would be better, like, it would be clearer if you just had the crescendo lead up to right around here, you know, sort of the middle of the beat, and then had piano. Or the best thing of all is to have a destination dynamic, right? So just tell us how loud you want this to get, because otherwise you're leaving it up to the player and the conductor. They may not do, you know, you might be imagining mezzo forte here, followed by piano subito, right? And then for the, once again, for the sake of the of perhaps less experienced orchestras, community players, students, whatever, mark this piano subito, right? Just to be absolutely clear. I mean, what else could it be? You might be thinking to yourself. And yet, you know, people who are not on that totally professional, craft-based, you know, period practice informed wavelength will find some way to interpret it wrongly, right? So I would say, give us a destination dynamic, and then the piano subito that comes afterward is so much more clear, right? You might get people imagining, for instance, that, oh, well, since it's a crescendo mark that ends with a piano, maybe I should start pianissimo here, right? And then I'll end up at a piano. See, that's an example of how this could go wrong, right? With players who aren't up on their period practice. Here, you might have a player even imagine that you had intended to put a mezzo piano there, right? And so it's there's a bunch of ways that, just to be absolutely clear, all right? Okay, and then like here you are deciding to just drop down again, right? And I would say all the more reason to have destination dynamics, so you know, so like there is a way of balancing this, because you know, to talk about the concern of harmonic density in here, which I would say, by the way, is beautifully done. All this natural horn scoring is you know, I don't know if period perfect is the right word, but it absolutely is of the essence of that period. So you know, if we're going to stick with that period, you don't really need to mark anything up or down. But all the same, you know, remember I was saying maybe put a pianissimo here, maybe put, you know, like if this is crescendo to mezzo forte, right here, by the time you get here, it's sort of a mezzo piano. So that would be piano crescendo to what? So mezzo forte, or do you want this to be slightly under, or whatever? You know, here you get the chance to decide that. But I feel that this gives enough harmonic density, excuse me, to be leading to this right in here very beautifully, keeping it in the lower winds and the G horns. I think that this is an excellent way of interpreting that. Okay, and then you know, my next question is contrast of texture, dynamics, color, whatever. You do that here. You just add your upper winds. And I feel that it's nice the way that you phrase this, you know. So you make this one kind of phrasal idea, you know, dun dun da da dum bum bum bum. So it isn't like once you get to here, you made the contrast and you've jumped to the next texture, but then you stay with the texture, right? So I think that all works great, and this is also excellent. You know, natural horn scoring right in here, working together with the bassoons and your full wind section and so on. Yeah, so really well done, nice and clean and clear, crisp even, I would say. So now we're getting to the fresh new color, right? Da 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 dum ba da ba bum bum, and you know, like in terms of this being completely fresh and new, like if you wanted to do that, then you would give it to the flute, right? Because we already heard solo oboe 3 times or 2 times in a row, right? So this is not a fresh new color, right? So if there was a way of bringing in something new, yeah, once again, flute or even clarinet might. But then again, clarinet has just had so much chance to open out here, right? Also as a solo kind of a sound. So, you know, you want your oboe here, and it is a beautiful, charming effect, and we've heard it a lot recently, you know, in other semi-brev efforts, and even at the tail end of some website subscriber entries and minim entries. Like they'll just be like a couple bars and it'll go to oboe or some other melody instrument. And oboe is just it's a great choice. I went with flute here because I hadn't used flute yet, right? And it just came in very, very fresh, and it sounded a lot, very natural and very much like Beethoven to me. And this is nice. Da-da. I like that. That's just, I feel that this is a nice, it's an elegant and simple way of solving the problems that I put forth in the Pitfalls video. And I really do like this broken up kind of thing. Once again, I feel that you captured a lot of Beethoven's approach as we see it in the in his interpretation of his Piano Sonata number 9, right, in E major. He made very similar choices, including taking it up half a step, right? It's like, so he takes it up half a step from E to F. You've taken this from F sharp to G, so that's also similar. And it has a very bright, round, glowing color in G major. So this all works fine. I think it's, and then like with this this B5 coming in here, and that takes us to the next page. Where we've got the complementary timbre. Let me go back. I forgot to mention, I really like the way that that you had this enclosing harmony on either side of the on either side of your thematic material, right? I think that is, it's just an interesting idea, and something that you don't really see that often, right? Even in more modern works. So excellent idea there. Now, moving on to the whole idea of thinking ahead to widening the gap, emphasis on the alternating middle note, like you're just checking those boxes one after the other as if you had read my evaluation criteria before you did your orchestration. So you are thinking like me. I like that. I really like the combination of oboe and bassoon in octaves on that sort of B flat A, B flat A, B flat A idea, along with the cello bolstering the bassoon part. Now, against these B flats that we just talked about, we've got these sounding A's, which we've got in a triple stack. Now, here you might be having some problems transposing. So just to sort of put everything, right in its place, clarinet in A is sounding down a minor third, so that's an A octave from like A3 to A4, right? But here, horn in D, that's like one step higher than horn in C basso, right? So you would be thinking down a minor seventh with these pitches, right? So so a written G in the staff is sounding A below the staff, right? So here you have A octaves that would be from like A2 to A3. So the clarinet is going to share this pitch here in the middle with this written pitch with this written pitch. They're the same pitch, right? But the problem here is that you don't have any accents on your clarinets, right? So like the middle one, of course, is going to have a tendency to get swallowed up by your third horn here. And then the top one will get a little bit swallowed up by just the overtones of the horns, right? So I would say, you could leave out the clarinets, you could add accents to the clarinets, you could have the clarinets playing a duet, or just like have a single clarinet here, maybe bolstered by the second violins playing like non-divisi. So adding the A above this E, and that's all perfectly easy to play. You just have the open A and then the violinist fingering the E below that, right? So just, a bunch of ways of bringing this out. But I would say if you're going to add doubling with the second violins, you could double both clarinets. If you're not going to have the doubling by the violins, just have a single clarinet so that you don't get that phased sound. So, sorry to be so picky about all this stuff, but it's just, the finer points are worth talking about when you have this much focus on craft. This is interesting right in here, the doubling of the timpani with the double basses working in octaves together. I think that that's excellent, and especially how you're kind of keeping the motor going here in your divisi cello, so lower divisi cello, the sort of back and forth of the first violins and the violas. Then of course these very precise dotted rhythms right in here, and yeah. So and here you just have this dedicated push, yeah, and just amping up the dynamic impulse, the momentum, and adding some syncopation in here. Those are all beautiful Beethoven-like touches. And we don't have to worry about dovetailing or anything like that, because you've chosen to just split it up with back and forth patterns in the strings and dotted rhythms here and so on. And you fill in, just naturally add elements to as the gap widens. You probably could have used some elements of horn in G. I won't get into the whole harmony of it or anything like that, but there are a few pitches that possibly could have gotten reinforced. But the way that you got it already is fine. It's like it doesn't really need to be messed with. But if you had wanted to, there could have possibly been a few elements that could have been bolstered by your G horns. But yeah, I mean, I like the way that this is stretched apart, and yeah, and that nice roll here on the A leading to the D. Yeah, I mean, I just think it's all very, very, very well done. And you didn't even bother with the trill except for like the roll on the timpani. So right, that takes over for any need to have that kind of real exciting edge of the seat sort of sound. So yeah, so I mean that is, and then like these triple stops here at the end, they're all totally easy. There's like two open strings and an F sharp on top. Yeah, it's just all really simply done. So yeah, so great work, Jon. I mean, it's there's a lot less for me to sort of pick apart and say try this, don't do that, and and maybe think of X, Y, and Z, because you really have done a lot of really great work here. The way the bassoons and the cellos work together, and the way these elements here in horns and double basses provide lower functioning pitches, so you don't have to peel off one of your cellos and drop it lower and have your double basses be lower and everything else. It's just, it has a really nice satisfying sound, and is it has really lovely balance and great textures and so on. So yeah, I mean, what else can I say? Well, maybe people out there listening have got some ideas of their own, a few things that I might have missed, or just didn't have time to talk about. And I suggest that you add those comments for Jon below. And Jon, if you have some time, maybe engage with some of those comments. Maybe thank some people for their compliments if they send them your way, or if they want to talk to you about certain things. Please engage with them, and also leave some of your opinions and your feedback and your creative critiques for some of your fellow participants to this orchestration challenge. And so far, people have been so generous with their comments and with their time, and I actually feel that this, even though this is kind of a slower rate of release, it feels to me like, like kind of releasing these one a day really gives people a chance to absorb them and not to feel like they are piling up on them too much. And I've kind of I mean, it's less pressure on me too. I can get more done in advance and not have to worry so much if something comes up and I have to take care of it. So I'll be, talking that over a little bit with some of my more advanced, or not advanced, but longer, the longer length entries, to see if there's a way of kind of reconciling the longer wait that they need to have. But anyhow, all that aside, thank you everybody. This is just such a joy, and it's so exciting. I thought I was actually going to take a nap this afternoon, but I just decided to do more evaluating. So I'm just going to go evaluate another one. So please join me in that video coming up really, really soon.